We're ready to talk 2020 Gordonsville High School Tiger football with head coach Scott Clemons entering his third season here at Gordonsville. And Coach, I'd say needless to say, this is probably the toughest, most challenging offseason you've had with all the COVID pandemic and just things being what they are. It's had to been pretty challenging this offseason.
Well, it has. You know, we got out of school somewhere around the middle of March and didn't see our kids for a couple months there, and finally got a chance to get back with them. And you know, it's been very limited what we could do to this point. So we've tried our best, and so far we've been successful to keep the corona out of our locker room. And our kids have responded. We had our first full day of pads yesterday, and I thought we had a good practice.
Talk about some of the things that have been challenging. No spring practice. Certainly that's had to hurt you with some of the younger players on the team. And this is still a relatively young Gordonsville team. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But talk about some of the challenges you have had to face in working around this coronavirus.
Well, in years past, and I've been here a long time, March, April, and May are important for a football season. And people think, well, it's baseball season, but you're finishing up your winter workouts. You're going into spring practice. You know, you got kids that have grown a little bit and have got stronger, so you want to see how they perform in spring,
right?
In hopes that they're able to get something for the upcoming season. And when you miss out on spring practice, it's a big deal, you know. So that was probably one of the biggest challenges that we faced. We're going into this season with some guys that, number one, we didn't get to see them in the spring to evaluate them physically, you know. And number two, we're not going to have any scrimmages to see, hey, this kid's ready to go, or you know, maybe not. So,
how tough does that make you going into week one, especially playing a tough opponent like Watertown, to not have that luxury of having some scrimmages? And I want to talk about the injuries you confronted last year, but just with that challenge going in, a really tough game right off the bat.
Well, Coach Webster's done a really good job. You know, the last few years, the Purple Tigers they're a team that's going to be reckoned with, and they're going to be in the hunt for the 2A state championship. So, you know, it goes back. We've played Watertown for a long time and had a great relationship working with them, and they're a good football team, and we understand the challenges that they face. From the aspect of us going in kind of blind without those scrimmages, it's scary, I ain't going to lie to you, you know, because they got a lot of kids coming back. They're probably going to have some question marks just like everybody else too, but I don't like it. I'll just be honest with you.
Coach, one thing, and I've kind of danced around it a little bit, talking about the injuries and the youth from a year ago. Last season, you went into the season with a lot of veteran leadership up front in your trenches, a lot of young skill players, but injury after injury. I think you had over 20-something injuries throughout the course of the season. Forced a lot of younger players into action. I guess if there's one maybe positive going into this year's, you have had a lot of players that actually have game experience. Kind of walk us through last season and the challenges you faced with all those injuries and how some of those younger players really had to step it up.
Well, just to say this, we go into the third round of playoffs playing South Pitt, and we got 6 freshmen starting that night at South Pitt. So that's a difficult events to play, a place to play when you're a senior and you're a seasoned player, let alone being a freshman. Mm-hmm. The good news is those kids got a lot of valuable experience, and you know, a lot of our kids, we got 57 kids on the roster, a lot of those guys have had some game experience. And I've said all along that experience in game is so beneficial. You can't replace that. You know, you can play B teams and you can practice and scrimmage, but when you're out there under the lights and you're playing, that's big. So it wasn't good for us last year, but we're hoping that it pays off down the road for sure.
This year kind of looks like a flip-flop from last year, where you're experienced up front and young in your skill positions. You're still young in the skill positions, but you have experience there, but you lost a lot of guys up front. Talk about those losses and who's going to have to step up to really protect you, especially on the offensive side of the ball with those young skill players.
Well, and we have 57 kids on our roster, and 42 of those are freshmen and sophomores.
Wow.
So we're still a young football team, even though they've had some experience. You know, I like where they're at, but it's the difference between a 15-year-old and an 18-year-old on Friday night. So, you know, we lost 10 seniors last year that we had some size and had played a long time, and Those guys are going to be missed, and it's time for some of these younger guys to step up and play. A lot of them got some valuable experience last year, so we're excited for that. We've got some tape on them. We've seen them in action, and they're a year bigger and a year stronger. So, hopefully they can get out here and do some good things for us.
Coach, your quarterback, a young man that everybody was excited about coming in last year, got some experience as an 8th grader. Matthew Albrecht now going into his sophomore year. Unfortunately, missed a lot of game time last year. I think all of 7 games, maybe part of one other game. You get him back this year. He had a strong showing down the stretch. Talk about his growth and development and what you see out of him in his full year 2 here at Gordonsville.
Well, when you start a freshman at quarterback, and I've never been a part of a team that done that, you understand there's going to be some growing pains that go along with him, not counting an injury.
Right.
And we would have liked to kept him injury-free last year and got him some more experience, but I think he ended up playing in 5 or 6 games for us, and we saw some things that we like. We saw some things we need to work on, and he's put a lot of time in this summer when he had the opportunity to throw. He was kind of instrumental. Some of our young men got together on their own and threw some football around during the Corona time when we couldn't get together. So I was proud of him for that. He's showing some leadership there, and we expect to have Matthew for 3 more years, and we expect him to take the next step forward this year, and hopefully he will.
You touched on leadership qualities with him getting players together. Talk about him. Is he that kind of vocal leader? Is he the kind of person in a huddle that has the attention of the offense when he's engineering drives down the field?
Well, he's just a kid that people want to be around. He can get them together and do things like that because they want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
So he did a good job. We got a couple of kids that hadn't played football, that played basketball, that decided to come out and play, and I think maybe he recruited them a little, to get them to come out there.
Yeah.
So, he done a good job with that also. So, as a sophomore, you don't like to think of your sophomores being leaders on your team, but he's showing some of those qualities.
Let's talk about some of the weapons he's going to have to work with on offense. We'll start in your offensive backfield. And, Gordonsville's been renowned as a team that's always been able to run the football. Who's going to step up there? And, again, having that luxury of having some younger players that had to fill some roles last year, that should be able to help you some, I would think, in your skill positions this year.
Well, and you're right. We like to run football here. We always have. And that starts up front with our offensive line, and we make no bones about that. We understand how the games are won and lost. It's up front. Mm-hmm. We've got some guys coming back that we think can play. We got a kid, Darryl Hope, that has moved in here that we think can carry the football a little bit. You got Mitchell Chapman, who's coming off an ACL surgery, but he's had a good a good recovery period, and played some linebacker for us last year. We got several kids that we feel can carry the football. Maybe not that guy that you're going to hand it to 25, 30 times, but if you can spread that out a little bit between those people and let them get a few reps here and there, I feel pretty good with our offensive, our running backs.
It seems like we're seeing more and more of that from the pro level, even on down to high school, where you don't have maybe the bell cow running back, as they used to call it, that one that's going to carry 30, 40 times a game. We've seen some of those at Gordonsville, but it seems you've got more weapons now, and it keeps kids fresher. It seems like keeps players fresher, and it kind of lowers that risk of injury maybe to a player that if they're not out there, 30, 40 snaps running the football.
The Braxton Givenses don't come along every day.
Right,
okay?
yeah.
And he was a guy that you could hang your hat on 25 to 30 carries a game. And we've had some really good ones here in the past. And but I think as we get into this new age of football, you got to spread that out a little bit. And people bring different skill sets to the game. Some people are better inside runners. Some are better outside. Some are better pass catchers out of the backfield. If you can. In NFL today, you can make a lot of money if you can catch football out of the backfield.
Yeah.
So those are things that if you have a variety of people, and we'd love to have one guy that could do all those things, but that's probably not possible.
Coach, let's get on the defensive side of the ball. Gordonsville always known for a really tough defense, and Coach Mac Petty is as good as anybody when it comes to coaching defense. Talk about that side of the ball and what you expect from the Gordonsville defense this year.
Well, in that process of playing all those young guys last year, we got a lot of experience. Coach Shaw feels pretty confident he's got between 8 and 10 guys that can play in the secondary, which is huge. And most time in a single A level, if you can find 4, you feel pretty good.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But we get together every time we do something, and we try to figure out who can play and who can help us at certain positions. And he's a guy that he coached our secondary for the last 3 years, and he feels more confident this year with a number of people. Grant Underwood's played our Mike linebacker for us last year. He's a junior, going to be a senior coming back, and we expect big things out of him. We've got several guys in the front that we feel pretty good about. Lucas Carter's coming back. He had a pretty good year as a junior, and Randall Ray is with us this year, and we expect some great things out of him. We've got several guys that we feel like. Yesterday's the first day we got pads on,
right.
So everybody looks good in shorts. But we had a pretty good practice yesterday, and we feel like we've got 6 or 8 guys there that can play up front, and we can keep people fresh and let them go.
Coach, we'll jump into the region race just a little bit. I don't think anyone saw Clay County really coming last year. They had an outstanding season and went on into the playoffs. Monterey, a 10-0 perfect regular season. Unfortunately, he slipped up in the first round of the playoffs. You guys start 1-5. You come back and manage to make it to the quarterfinal round. A lot of players back. I know some losses for everybody, of course, but how do you see the region shaking out this year?
Well, Coach Johnson's done a really good job at Clay County. You can kind of see from junior high, we knew this was coming from Clay. They've had some good junior high teams.
Right.
They've got some players up there, and I think they're going to be hard to beat this year. They've got a pretty good senior class. It's coming up with they're pretty good up front. They lost their quarterback, but they got a kid that they feel pretty confident in. Both running backs are back. All their offensive line's back. So just on paper, they look like the team to beat to me.
Right.
Monterey had a great year last year. But again, they had a big senior class. Those guys have been playing together. Had a good game plan with what they did. Both their running backs are back, but they lost their quarterback, some offensive linemen, some receivers. So, Scott Hughes does a good job with them, and I'm sure they'll be in the mix at the end of it too. So.
And you never can factor out Joe Burns because, sometimes they're a very competitive team. They were down a little bit last year, but Coach Atkins over there, been over there a long time, and he does a fine job with that program too. They should factor into the playoff race.
Oh, yeah, Joe Burns. Coach Atkins is a very well-respected coach and coaching. He's been, for head coach there for 20-something years, and they find a way to win. And they were down a little last year, but they played a lot of young kids too. So I'm assuming they're going to be pretty good. The thing is we haven't been in school. We hadn't been, so you don't hear as much.
Right.
There was some talk about maybe moving the season back, and if that was the case, we was going to open up with Clay County. Mm-hmm. That's a scary spot to be in,
yeah.
Not knowing something about them. But our region's going to be tough again. I think it's going to be hard to compete for.
Coach, you mentioned the middle school program at Clay County. I want to talk about the middle school program here at Gordonsville. I know the last couple of years have been extremely competitive. You're starting to get some of the kids up. Talk about the junior high program and what you've seen from them the last couple of years and the quality of players you're getting from that system here in these last couple of years.
We're very fortunate here. Some people think it's a curse. Our high school coaches our junior high also.
Right.
And I did it for a long time, coached both of them. And I've always said I felt like that was a benefit for us because the same people coached them in middle school and then they turn around and coach them in high school. Coach Petty's the head coach in junior high. They've been really successful the last couple of years and won their conference championship. And there's some good players that's come. We've got good numbers in our freshman and sophomore class right now. There's 20 in both classes, 20, 21. So that's kind of unheard of at a single A to have that many particular kids in a class. Now the thing is keeping them all together,
right.
And they've been successful. So that should translate into success at the high school level if we can coach them up.
Right. Coach, looking at the schedule, last year you really loaded things up. You brought some good teams onto your schedule. Coalfield was in there, Fayetteville, some really good teams, and I know you kind of took some lumps, but I think it makes you better in the long run to have that quality of team, and you always play Carthage at the beginning of the year. Watertown, always very good, and a good rivalry. Talk about those games this year. It looks like another tough schedule. You throw Clay County back in there. You know, Monterey's going to be competitive, Joe Burns, all that. Top to bottom, it's a pretty solid schedule. Hopefully things will hold up and you get to play all of those games this year.
Well, we hope so. And, you know, one of the things that we look at here is how far you make it in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. The regular season, I mean, they're important, you know, but we want to play good people.
Yeah.
We want to get, you know, the battle tested so when we get in the playoffs, it's not a surprise to us. We understand that, you know, if at some point in time, if we're successful, we're going to meet up with South Pitt.
Right.
So we got to be ready to play those guys, and you know, Coach Goddard does a great job with them, and we want to try to emulate what we see in that game, you know, during our regular season. You happen to leave out Trials of the County.
I happen to leave out Trials to County, but they're right in there too. And,
trust me, our assistant coaches tell me all the time, who made this schedule?
But it makes you better in the long run, and quality opposition will do that. And just like you said, you want to get in the playoffs. Last year, again, you start 1-5, you're 3-7, you go in, you get to the quarterfinal round, and you can't, you know, with such a young team coach and with all the injuries you battled, I don't think you could have asked much more than that. You really came together at the right time, it seemed like. We
got a couple kids back, you know, right at the end of the regular season, and things kind of fell our way. We end up you know, ain't many 3-7 teams get a second round home game in the playoffs,
right.
But we were able to play here. You know, and I mean, we went to South Pitt a little undermanned at that point, but you know, we had a chance to go play, and we wanted those kids to experience that, you know, to get ready for it. And you know, I thought we ended up having a pretty decent year based on a lot of the things that went on. So you know, took some momentum in the off season, and you know, up until we got out of school, I thought we had a pretty good workouts.
Coach, we'll wrap it up. Talk a little bit about how maybe COVID is going to affect the crowd this year. You always love a packed stadium, but it may just not come to be this year depending on what happens, and it could change as the season goes along. How do you think that affects the atmosphere on a Friday night when you may have to operate with, I don't know the percentages, and I don't think we have a number yet, but if it's half capacity or even less than that, how's that going to affect that Friday night atmosphere? And how does that affect your players and their mindset and how they really get pumped up, amped up for the game?
Well, when you come from a place like Gordonsville, and football's important, and these people haven't got to be out and do a lot of things. We had our first day of full pads yesterday, and there was people parked on the fence everywhere to watch practice. Okay, so I think they're going to show up to the games if we can get to play, and we'll figure out where we're going to put everybody, how many we can put in there. But I don't foresee us not having a crowd here when we get an opportunity.
Absolutely. Coach, I know you feel the same way I do. We hope that all this stuff's going to go away soon. We can have packed football stadiums, have a great atmosphere, Friday night lights. And I'll tell you what, after you've gone without sports as long as we have, and I know we're seeing some baseball and stuff, it's just not the same. You open those floodgates, people are going to come and watch games. They're going to be fired up and excited and, well, like we are, ready to get out of the house.
Sure.
Coach Scott Clemons, talk a little Gordonsville football with us today. Coach, we wish you and Big Blue all the best this year. Looking forward to an exciting season. And, hey, you never know. Let's go get that gold ball there at the end of the season.
Well, that's what we're going to try to do.
All right, talking Gordonsville football today with head coach Scott Clemons here on DTC Sports.